Hello, I am going to be doing a live with Sarah. So I'm going to invite her on now. Sarah. So we're going to be talking about the mindset of training. We're going to be talking about not only the mindset of training, but how to get the most out of your sessions without doing the whole mindset of thinking that more is better, or that the more we do, the better our gains or the better our results. Because that's not going to lead to the outcomes that you want. If anything, doing too much can actually set you back because there's a stimulus fatigue curve. And the more work that you do, the more work that you do that isn't quality work, that isn't effective work, is going to eat at your recovery. She should be coming on. I just accepted her. It says she's unable to join for some reason. I'll try and invite her again. It's going to eat into your recovery. And if it eats into your recovery, that means it's going to then impact your subsequent sessions. And that can reduce your output. There she is.
I heard you say unable to join, and I was like, oh no.
There we go. We got you. So I just did a brief overview on how we're talking about how you can maximize your sessions, but not taking that to mean doing the most possible. And I think a lot of people also get into the mindset of thinking that every exercise needs to lead to the most gains possible or the most strength possible. But we don't just train to get stronger, and we don't just train to build muscle. We have to keep our quality of movement. Sometimes we need to do movements to make sure that we don't, like, if people have postural constraints, just like what Sarah's doing with her hips, and something that I had to, like, what she's going through now is what I did in 2018. I don't know how many years ago then, 5 years ago. In 2018, I spent most of that year having to restore the way that I breathe and brace because I was a ribcage breather. I wasn't a diaphragm breather. Yeah. And that impacts everything that you do. So sometimes you might need to do things that feel like they're fluff work or that they're keeping things in check. So the mindset that you take into training is really important. So I'll let you lead the next part of that with what it means to maximize your training without going all or nothing, balls to the wall, then bust.
Yeah. So for this, like, we're going to be talking about hypertrophy, right? So like muscle building, like that style of training for the most part. But when we think about like progressive overload, we also want to consider set quality, and that's where I like the term progressive stimulus. How someone phrased it to me a couple of years back, and that really is what we're doing for muscle building, for hypertrophy, bodybuilding kind of purposes, and strength as well, right? Because you could just load weight on the bar, but are you safely going to be able to move it, right? Or are you going to maybe lead to injuries, and then, there goes your strength gains. But like definitely want to consider like the quality of the movement. So are we effectively overloading like the target muscle, right? So maybe like our belt squats that we're always like posting like back and forth, like sure, we could like load it up and just like run through it and like bounce up and down, but is there, are we overloading our glutes? Are we, maybe you wanted to grow your quads more, with that movement. Are you set up in a way that is going to stress your quads more than your glutes, right? So that's kind of what we mean here as far as like, that a PR is not always just more weight on the bar. And obviously, like, I think that's the goal for us all, right? Especially for our compound movements, is to see those linear progressions, with weight, with reps. But the more advanced you get, it's not going to happen, every single week. And a match is still a win, oftentimes.
I think a lot of people direct their instantaneous results or the want for seeing tangible things ASAP into their training. It goes from body focus to now training focus, in that they always try to PR their logbook, or they think if things aren't moving, then they're not progressing. But sometimes, like, your session might not be something that will have a lot of numbers up in the reps or in the pounds because of the way that it's structured, especially if it's like a lot of cable work, a lot of accessory work, because those are small muscle groups as well. So you need to also think about the muscles that you are using, because things like delts, like I still use 3 kilos for my delts. And
Right, like
sometimes I don't.
yeah.
For lateral raises, like, and sometimes I don't even count my reps half the time. I just go until I literally cannot do another rep, because it's a high rep. Like, it usually says 15 to 20, so I just go until I can't do another rep with that. If I go too heavy, I'm not stressing the shoulders anymore. I feel more of my traps. I don't like the way that Gareth said it is, you want to find the muscle, then you want to load the muscle, and then you want to think about progressive stimulus, which I love that term, and I started using that myself when I saw you use it a while ago, because that, like, if you're always going in to PR the logbook, you're not getting progressive stimulus anymore. You're just getting a chase of numbers. Like, you're forcing progress. You can't force progress. Progress is a byproduct of you putting in the reps, of you showing up to each session with the intent of, I'm going to make this set my best set. But you say that every single set. And in doing that, you're going to get stronger over time. You're going to build muscle over time. And then you're going to see the progress show. But then you also need to take into account, you can take this one really well. Are you in a muscle building phase? As in, are you eating sufficient calories? A lot of people are in really low calorie mode, not even in a proper fat loss phase. They're just low calorie, balls to the pedal. Your balls don't go to the pedal. Your foot goes to the pedal. Foot to the pedal, chronic dieting on really low calories, or in a fat loss phase in itself, which, yeah, you can still get stronger, but you're not going to see progress as quickly. But if you're eating at least at maintenance, you have the ability to see progress a lot more. And then there's hormones that come into this. Are you in a healthy body?
Yeah, the healthy body is a responsive body, right? I like what you said about kind of going back to like progressive overload and what you want to think about approaching each set. I like that, or someone you interviewed who said it. You said find the muscle first. I feel like that is so important, and definitely something that gets easier as we go. But one tool that can be really helpful for this is either bands or your body weight. So like practicing like contracting a muscle. So like flexing in the mirror, like practicing like contracting your lat, or using a band to, do like a pull down, and really focusing on that contraction and that feeling. Rear delts, like focusing on like what it feels like to actually be like connecting with that muscle, because then when you get into, your rear delt fly, or, your lat pull down, like you can channel that feeling and make sure you stay on that muscle for the whole set. And I think that is what a lot of people lack, is they just kind of, when they first start, especially, right, they just go to the gym and they're doing the movement, but they're not loading the muscle that they're wanting to work. And that's partly too why they're not seeing, the results that they want. I know for me, like when we did like COVID era here, like when we were doing like garage gyms, and I had to like be super creative with like bands and stuff, I feel like that was so helpful for my training in a way, because I had to get super creative with how to load muscles and how to work with bands, and that allowed me to kind of connect to muscles in a different way that translated really well when it was time to go back to the gym.
For me, I found the 2 most important things that led me to progress and advance my training so much has been, number 1, the bracing work that I put in, because you need to use, like, it sounds stupid, but you use your lats for literally every exercise that you do, because your lats are a part of your core fundamentally. It's the whole fascia on your back. It is supporting your rib cage. It's supporting everything that contains you. That is like your posterior core, and then you have your anterior core. That is like you're bracing, and the way that you connect that lock with your, like, you can't engage the glutes without engaging the core and the abs because they're synergists. And that works the same with your lats as well, because that all ties it together, because they, like, there's the fascia sheet at the back as well. So that's just something to keep in mind. And the other part was realizing that it wasn't all about load on the bar. It was chasing load on the bar that actually held me back, because I wasn't focusing on the muscle. I was just focusing on how heavy can I do this? I need to beat my logbook every single week. Otherwise, I'm a failure. I'm weak. I used to berate myself all the time. Like, I moved that focus that I had on trying to change my body so much to trying to change, like, just having this tangible thing. And a lot of people fall into this mindset. And where's the joy in that? Like, you said this in a post as well. So park that in your mind so you can talk about it later. But where's the fun in what you're trying to do? Why are you making it like we're going back to school? Like, this is your life. You're making it your best life. This is making you stronger. This is turning you into your most confident, your best, your most thriving self, because it leaks into everything else. It helps you create structure in your life. Like, why aren't you enjoying this a lot more? Of course, you're not going to enjoy it at first, but your mindset dictates everything. You can either continue to hate it and use it as a means to berate your body, to need to change your body, or you can use it as a means to become your very best self and realize how much it's adding to your life and what your life would be like without it. Because this keeps you healthy. It keeps you away from all that sickness stuff. But I don't know why I went down that tangent. But anyway.
Well, no,
it's
but
like,
it's so true. Like, and it's something people have asked me before. Is like, how do you like make sure you're always chasing improvements and, you know, progressing and still like find love in the process? And it is that it's going back to like the skill of it and the fun of it, and like not taking yourself like too seriously, right? And like, you know, finding like little ways that you can improve. And maybe this takes us to like our next, you know, kind of thing we wanted to talk about. I mean, you were talking about your core and like using, you know, mobility work and time outside of your training sessions to really learn how to breathe properly, something that so many people just don't, you know. And I mean, we were all there, you know, or we were both there. But feet is like the other like area that, you know, I feel like can unlock so much, is when you have that stable base coupled with being able to brace properly and engage your core and know what it really means to engage your core. That, you know, that can again like unlock so much. And back to like that skill component, like it is kind of like little like tedious stuff, but like it's cool to see it come together even though it's tedious, right? You know, thinking about like nutrition and dieting and, you know, a building phase, like, yeah, it's tedious, yeah, it takes a long time, but like when you put those progress pictures side by side, you know, 3 months apart, it's like, oh wow, right? And kind of same thing with your training, like you focus on these little things, and sure enough, like you look back 3 months and you're like, oh wow, I added, you know, 30 pounds to this lift or whatever it is.
yeah, and I think another reason that people find it so hard to find joy in the process and to make progress is because they want to see results in 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 8 weeks. And I was guilty of this because I finally started to do a glute specialization program once, and I was smashing my glutes. Like, I felt like I was working so hard, and the fact that I didn't see my glutes suddenly turn into this bubble butt like I saw online, I was just like, what's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? There's something wrong here. But it's like, so many glutes you see online are, number one, posed, and number two, you're comparing your still photos, your progress photos, to someone else's posed photos. There are two different things there. So there's that. And then there's the other thing you said, where this is a skill. It's something you learn over time. And the way to get to that body that you want is to have effective reps, to have effective sets, to like, that effectiveness comes as a skill because you learn to train closer to failure. And it's the closer to failure that you get that you use those higher threshold units, even if that failure is at a lighter weight that you're using, because you might use 60 kilos one week, or let's just say 60 pounds, 60 kilos, just so it's a round number. But then you need to use 40 pounds or 40 kilos. If you're still failing on the last 2 reps, you're still getting the same stimulus there. It's just that so many other factors may have led to that. Like maybe it's a different place in the program, or maybe now you have accumulated fatigue. Like there are so many different things there. Maybe it's in a different program. Like you can't just tie it to a number. But one more thing I want to touch on. Your cues can change over time, in that there was a time where I had someone put his toes on a plate for RDLs, but that was just so he can learn to feel his hamstrings. And then once you remove that plate and say, now I want you to do that same thing, but I want you to plant your feet into the ground and focus on as though you're like the same thing. Like you want to think of tripod feet. When you look at cues online, you need to understand which ones are for you, which goes to our message that not every message is for you. Because maybe at first, I know for me it helped. I used the cue head up for my RDLs, for everything, to help me with thoracic extension. But now that I learned how to now integrate that into bracing and looking with a neutral spine, now I do it the optimal way. So your cues can change over time. Find what works for you and then move it to more optimal, because you can't optimize what isn't already done consistently or established.
Right. And you have to be okay with playing with it. Like you're saying, like you were doing, like, hey, this cue worked now and now it doesn't, and we just keep playing and tweaking, and that's part of the fun of it.
Yeah, and I think a really important thing we can touch on to summarize just how important it is to get your mindset right for training is how you prep for the session.
Yeah.
Do you know what actual workouts you're doing that day, as in exercise you're doing that day? Do you know the mindset that you need to have there? Look over your coach's notes. What do you need to improve? And the most important thing we both love is you don't just need to film your lifts to send it to your coach. You can film them for yourself to watch between your sets, so then you can improve set upon set. Because a lot of the time, you're not actually aware of where your body is moving in space, especially at first. We don't have that proprioception or awareness of our body in space, in simple terms. So I'll let you end on that, and anything else you want to talk about.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just talking to someone sent me a training video today, and he's like, oh, I did not know I had that range of motion. Like it didn't feel like that, when I was doing it. It's totally right. It's why we film. So, yeah, I think filming and looking at it between sets and then connecting with how you felt, it is really helpful to help lock things in or like see what you need to work on. And then like that training mindset, this is where like I am big on a pen and paper logbook. At least for me, like not being on my phone, like just like writing things down, like just the act of that. Or sometimes even like I'll write down the rep that I want to get before I even do it. So say I want to get 10 reps and I'm like nervous about it. Like maybe I really think I can only get 8 or 9. I'll write down 10. So now when I go do that set, I have in the back of my head, like I wrote 10, like I want to get that 10, So like little tricks like that. And like, I don't know, like what do you listen to when you train?
The gym music, it's actually really good.
Okay, but like I know people that listen to podcasts when they lift. And it's like, what are you doing? Like that is like wrong brain space to be in. Like we're not learning about or listening to true crime right now or whatever it is people do podcasts about. But anyway, it is important, I think, the drive, on the way to the gym, like to visualize the lift. It's important to like visualize where it's going to be hard and visualizing yourself successfully pushing past that point. I do that a lot for like my compound lifts.
Something to also know is what your weakness is. A lot of people, it's not in pushing themselves, it's in actually pushing the tempo. A lot of people don't slow things down enough, and that's what I was coming to with the where's the enjoyment in this. Instead of putting that, I remember what I came to now, instead of putting that obsession with changing things, it was all on trying to get the logbook. But the thing is, as soon as I let that go aside and started doing my freaking it's 3 elephants, not 2 elephants, and slowing things down, I started to feel the muscles a lot more. I started to get my best results then because I was getting the rep ranges. I was completing exercises properly and getting progressive stimulus, not just numbers going up in the logbook. And another way to find your muscle is to touch it before you lift, because then it's easier to connect with it. But sometimes you have other restrictions that stop you from getting there. So you might find that you can't get your rear delts in some movements because your traps are overactive. So you might have to lie down on a bench, for example. But this is where a coach can come in to help you with that stuff. And yeah, I think that covers everything. Is there anything else you want to talk about the training mindset?
No, I mean, I think we can talk all day, but I think we covered a lot of good little nuggets for people without overwhelming. Because that's the other thing too is, going back to like cues and stuff, sometimes less is more, and just trusting your body and being like, okay, let's go. And just trusting the cues that you are implementing, I think goes a long way.
I love that. That's true. Because a lot of the time overthinking can lead to you not actually focusing on the muscle you're trying to work as well. So that's us for today. We might do another live on, here's a little hook, why body recomp is a bad end goal to have in itself. Like, not end goal, a bad, what would you call it?
A bad goal, like I guess a bad goal, a bad
focus in general. Yeah.
Why try more in the live?
Yeah. We'll talk about it more in the live, but that's the concept. So we will see you then, and we will discuss what we're going to talk about, and you will see us then, because we don't see you.
Bye. On that note, thanks for having me.